Chapter 603. The beast deity shook his head and said, "She is an expert in psychology. Even if it was me, she would be able to tell if I lied in front of her. So what happened to Snake is true." Gu Mingming frowned and remained silent for a while before asking, "So, did she go back?" The beast deity looked at Gu Mingming quietly and shook his head again. "She stayed behind for Snake's father." Gu Mingming stared at the beast deity in shock and frowned. Didn't she think that everything was an illusion? She could even bear to leave her own son, how could she? The beast deity was still smiling, but there was a tinge of disappointment in his smile. He said, "Are you interested to hear what happened after Snake was born?" Gu Mingming bit her lower lip but still nodded. The beast deity said, "Snake's memory should have stopped when his father threw him into the cold lake?" Gu Mingming nodded to acknowledge it. The beast deity continued. "His father threw the snake egg into the cold lake in front of Wang Xiaoxin and told her that he was different from other males. He would not let her leave him just to grieve in silence because of her desire. He said that since Wang Xiaoxin had provoked him, she could forget about shaking him off for the rest of her life. If Wang Xiaoxin wants to go back, she can either bring him along or kill him." Gu Mingming lowered her eyes and remained silent for a moment. She thought of the black wolf at home. He had said something similar. "If this is a dream, please kill me before I wake up. Don't let me face a world without you alone. That is more torturous than death." The beast deity paused for a moment and did not continue. He just looked at Gu Mingming, who seemed to be deep in thought, as if giving her time to slowly recall. After a long while, Gu Mingming finally opened her mouth and said, "Since she was sure that everything was a hallucination after the hypnosis, then once she wakes up, Snake's father will definitely disappear. No one can bring a person from a hallucination into reality. If Wang Xiaoxin is a rational person, she will definitely think of this. Bring him away, impossible. Kill, reluctant. So she decided to stay behind?" The beast deity chuckled and shook his head. "No, she decided to kill him." Gu Mingming was stunned. She looked up at the beast deity and asked, "You clearly said that she stayed behind for Snake's father." The beast deity gave Gu Mingming a reassuring smile before continuing, "She personally plucked off the scales protecting Snake's father's heart, then used her sharp claws to pierce through his chest. Snake's father's blood splattered all over Wang Xiaoxin's face. Wang Xiaoxin stared at the bloody hole in his chest and her own bloodied hand. On the other hand, Snake's father smiled and hugged her in his arms, kissing her tears and saying to her, 'This is good too, at least, until death I did not lose you.'" Gu Mingming widened her eyes, unable to say a word. Having inherited Snake's memories, she knew very well how stubborn the males in the beast world were towards love. Compared to death, they were more afraid of their beloved females being harmed. Back then, when Barit and Quinton knelt on the platform of the deity's punishment, they would rather be dried and skinned than move, because they were afraid that the person in their hearts would be punished. Later on, it was the same for Snake. Although Ellie's last bite was the poison from her suicide, Snake actually had a way to neutralize it. Aside from the topic, today's update was over. Chapter 604. However, the process of detoxification was a little complicated, and she would have to endure the pain of the poison for a long time. Furthermore, even if the poison was detoxified without the self-healing ability of a beast king, her legs would still be crippled. So Snake gave his life to her, not to ensure that she would not die, but because he could not bear to let her suffer, that's all. Gu Mingming remained silent and did not speak. She only felt a tightness in her chest. She couldn't tell if it was because of Snake or because of Snake's memory reacting to the entanglement between her father and mother. The beast deity patted Gu Mingming's shoulder lightly, then continued, "The death of Snake's father was a huge blow to Wang Xiaoxin. She didn't understand why she felt so sad and painful even though she knew it was an illusion. At that time she was ill and couldn't get up. She closed her eyes but couldn't sleep. I knew that she wanted to sleep so that she could see me, so I helped her sleep and let her enter the dreamland to find me." Gu Mingming looked up at the beast deity, waiting for his next words. A trace of melancholy appeared on the beast god's face. He sighed and continued, "She asked me if all of this was an illusion. I repeated what I had told her the first time we met. I told her that the serpent's egg was not broken. It was at the bottom of the cold pond. If she wanted to go back, I could help her retrieve the egg. But she shook her head. She said she wasn't going back, she wanted to stay in the beast world." Gu Mingming looked at the beast deity in confusion. She did not understand what Wang Xiaoxin was thinking. In order to go back, she would not hesitate to use her own son as a key. In order to return, she did not hesitate to kill her own male. But when everything was ready, she still wanted to stay. The beast deity looked at Gu Mingming and asked, Unbelievable, right? I also feel very strange. So I asked her why she decided to stay. Her answer was, I want to avenge whales. Gu Mingming looked at the beast deity speechlessly. The beast deity just smiled back at her quietly and said, Whales is Snake's father, Wang Xiaoxin's male snake beast. Gu Mingming replied, but didn't she kill him with her own hands? Who else do you want to take revenge on? The beast deity nodded and smiled bitterly. Look for herself. Gu Mingming was stunned as she looked at the beast deity in confusion. The beast deity continued, on one hand she firmly believed that the beast world was an illusion, on the other hand she was so tormented by Whale's death that she could not breathe. Her rationality told her that as long as she got rid of this hypnosis, she would be able to free herself from Whale's death. This was because after she woke up she would gradually forget everything in the dream. But she realized that she wasn't willing to forget Whales. Chapter 605. The beast deity gently wiped away the tears on Gu Mingming's face and said, since you understand his painstaking efforts, all the more you should pull yourself together. He will not be at ease if you cry like this. Gu Mingming slapped the beast deity's hand away and roared, then return him to me. Aren't you the beast deity? You should be able to bring the dead back to life, right? The beast deity sighed and said, do you still not understand? I can't just interfere with the matters of the beast world. Gu Mingming said, I don't understand. The beast deity said, if I had not interfered back then and told Wang Xiaoxin that the beast king who is related by blood could become her key to transmigrating back, then the things that happened later would not have happened. She would still have met Whales and given birth to Snake, but she would not have pierced Whale's chest with her claws. Perhaps she would have loved her child like those mothers in television dramas and willingly stayed behind to become a better guide. In these 1,000 years, I have been reflecting on this matter, but I still could not help but interfere with the matters of the beast world a few times. In the end, all the matters that I interfered with did not develop in the direction that I had hoped for, and the ending became increasingly bleak. This made me finally understand that everything in this world has its own trajectory. Destroying the original trajectory will not change things for the better and will only lead to destruction. Gu Mingming stared coldly at the beast deity and said, so you are just a damn television watcher. Everyone in the beast world is a serial on the television. Other than watching, you can't turn off anything else, right? You won't care whether others live or die or how tragic their lives are, right? The beast deity hesitated for a moment before nodding. Gu Mingming said, then what kind of god are you? The beast deity was still smiling gently and said, if a god has to solve every suffering, then what should a god do when he encounters suffering? All I can do is to guide him. Gu Mingming stood up immediately and said, what the hell did you guide him about? You just guided Wang Xiaoxin to kill her husband and son and finally torture herself to death? The beast deity lowered his head and said, Wang Xiaoxin brought faith to the beast world and you brought hope to the beast world. Gu Mingming roared, hope my ass. I'm *king in despair myself. Who else can I give hope to? My son is unconscious now and I don't know if he's dead or alive. I don't need him to recover immediately. Just tell me if there's a way to save him. But you're not even willing to tell me a way and you're still talking to me about hope? The beast deity looked up and accepted Gu Mingming's rebuke with a calm expression. He waited for her to finish her sentence like a machine gun before he said softly, I can tell you how to wake Qixin up, but it will only result in him living a life worse than death. It may even implicate more people you care about. For example, Elvis, Leah, and the other 3 little wolves. Do you still want an answer that will make everyone suffer? Stunned, Gu Mingming bit her lower lip tightly. If he had said that he would make her pay a terrible price in exchange for Qixuan's awakening, she would have agreed without hesitation. But why did it have to be Elvis, Leah, Hada and his brothers and even Qixin himself who suffered a fate worse than death? The beast deity was still smiling kindly. Don't worry, trust me. I will not let my grandson die like this. You will find a way to save Qixin even if I don't tell you. Aside. Chapter 606. Gu Mingming was stunned. She even forgot about her tears as she stared at the beast deity. Really? The beast deity nodded. Deities cannot lie. I can guide you, but I cannot give you an answer. As long as you have a benevolent heart, you will definitely find a way to save Qixin. Moreover, don't you have 2 males by your side who are willing to risk their lives for you? They will not bear to let you be so upset. Gu Mingming was skeptical. Then, how long will Qixin be unconscious for? The beast deity shook his head. I don't know either. It all depends on how hard you work. Gu Mingming clenched her fists. I wonder what level the mighty beast deity is at? Can you take a beating from me who has the strength of a beast king? The beast deity was taken aback. He suddenly laughed. This is a dream. Your beast king powers cannot be used here. Moreover, I am just an illusion. You cannot hit me. Gu Mingming raised her brows. She swung her fist at the beast deity in disbelief. Indeed, it was as if she was waving her fist in the air. There was no resistance at all. But a wave of dizziness soon followed. Gu Mingming felt herself falling downwards. The beast deity's calm and amiable voice rang out above her head. Don't worry, don't be afraid. Your father beast is with you. I am with you. Gu Mingming sat up with a loud roar. Her eyes were bloodshot and looked frighteningly hideous. Mingming? Leah gently tugged at Gu Mingming's little hand. His face was full of worry. Are you all right? Gu Mingming looked at Leah, then at Elvis, who was standing by the bed with a face full of worry. She was stunned for a long while before she regained her senses. Closing her eyes, Gu Mingming leaned her head against Leah's chest. One of her hands was held by Leah. She used the other to gently massage her temples. I am fine. I just had a dream. Leah stood up and knelt behind Gu Mingming. Then he gently rubbed Gu Mingming's temples with both hands. Elvis sat in Lee's seat and held Gu Mingming's hand, saying, You slept for 2.5 days crying and screaming, and woke up shouting damn you, and you still say you're fine? Gu Mingming clenched her teeth and said, It's nothing, I am just going to see the beast deity. This old thing actually used official language to brush me off. Leah stopped rubbing Gu Mingming's temples and asked hesitantly, Did he do anything bad to you? Gu Mingming lowered her head and did not say a word, her face gloomy. Leah bit his lower lip and said, Is our family going to have another new male? Gu Mingming was taken aback. She looked up at Leah with a face full of question marks. There was a tinge of jealousy in Lee's long and narrow eyes. He said with some resentment, In your dream, you cried and said that you liked him and asked the beast deity to return him to you. You cried so loudly. Tell me, which male did the beast deity show you in your dream to make you fall in love with him so much after one night of sleep? I will help you find him. Gu Mingming's expression darkened. She lowered her head and kept silent for a long time before saying, I saw Snake in my dream. He came to bid farewell to me. Elvis and Leah were also stunned at the mention of Snake. That person, even if they could really become a beast king in the future, they would never have the chance to win him. They would forever be the weaklings who would be intimidated by a single glance from him and be unable to stand up. Chapter 607. Gu Mingming repeated what happened in her dream to Elvis and Leah and came to a conclusion. Wait. Elvis and Leah worshipped the beast deity blindly. They said that since the beast deity said that he would guide her, then they should just wait for him to guide them. Gu Mingming was frustrated, but she could not think of a better solution other than waiting. Rubbing her temples, Gu Mingming asked, Did anything happen during the 2 days I was asleep? Leah and Elvis exchanged glances before Elvis said, 3 wolf pups came to see you, but I chased them away. Gu Mingming looked up at Elvis. Elvis cleared his throat and said, I think you didn't want them to worry for nothing, so I just said that you were frightened in the Snake King Valley and it was too tiring for you to rush back, so you slept for a while longer and asked them not to disturb your sleep. Gu Mingming thought about it and felt that Elvis's way of handling things was right, so she nodded and did not pursue the matter. Leah continued, During the time we were in the Snake King Valley, the people from the Snow Fox tribe were not very well behaved. Gu Mingming looked at Leah and asked, Why? Want to overthrow me and welcome Cole back? Leah was taken aback and did not understand why Gu Mingming would think that way. He just shook his head and said, No, they felt that the people from St. Nazaire must have some esoterica that you left behind, so they forced Oakley to hand it over. Oakley took advantage of the situation and used this esoterica to threaten the few stubborn old foxes from the Snow Fox tribe. With Oriton and Barit's protection, nothing big happened, but there were many conflicts between the two tribes. The males were fine, but the females from the Snow Fox tribe and the females from St. Nazaire, the smell of gunpowder was a little too strong. I heard that there were already a few fights and there were casualties on both sides. Gu Mingming rubbed her temples and felt helpless. She originally thought that they were going to act fighting the Qing and restoring the Ming, but in the end they were going to act why do women make things difficult for women. Gu Mingming knew that although Leah was the witch doctor of the tribe, she had been gone for a month, and if she did not show up for all the trivial matters that had accumulated, Leah would have to spend 10 or even 20 times more effort to settle them. Sighing, Gu Mingming invited the few tribe elders into the meeting room. Gu Mingming sat on the main seat while Elvis and Leah stood on both sides. Barit and Oriton stood below Elvis, not saying a word. They just stood there quietly. Ian's injuries were slightly lighter than Elvis's and Lee's, so he was more or less recovered now. However, his face still looked sickly and listless, but he exuded a cold aura which made others not dare to belittle him. Standing not far below Leah, he looked down at the few Snow Fox elders standing opposite Gu Mingming, who were clearly feeling uneasy. Gu Mingming chuckled. "Elders, you have worked hard during the 1 month that I was not around." The old men exchanged glances before one of them took a step forward and said, "It is our duty to share the burden of the great emissary. I don't dare to say that it was tough." Gu Mingming chuckled. Ever since she had a nap, why was it so annoying for people to talk official language to her? Chapter 608. This was the first time the elders saw Gu Mingming after she returned. If their previous apprehension and obedience towards Gu Mingming was because of her title as the messenger of the beast deity, now this fear was because of Gu Mingming herself. She was still the same person, smaller and more exquisite. But that pair of clear eyes was no longer as lively and clean as before, but emptiness. Yes, it was emptiness. An emptiness with no regard for anything. When Gu Mingming chased Cole away, the few elders were still complacent, thinking that this new messenger, who had her emotions written all over her face, was much easier to control than Cole, who was always elegant and never procrastinated. But now they realized that they were wrong. Was it because Gu Mingming had concealed herself too well in the past, or had some earth-shattering changes happened in this 1 month? It was just 1 month. What changes could there be? That was... The few elders exchanged glances and within a breath's time, they had reached a consensus. Gu Mingming was a scheming person. All her previous naivety was just a facade. Was it a test? Gu Mingming went to the Snake King Valley to hand over the unstable solder to a mere second-level orc, Oakley, and left behind 2 third-level orcs to assist in suppressing the situation, before bringing Elvis and Leah away without any worries. All this was just a test? The few elders' knees gave way and they knelt onto the ground with a thud. Their bodies started to tremble uncontrollably as they thought to themselves, "Miscalculation, miscalculation. Great messenger, please calm down, we just want to worship the esoterica properly, we don't have any other intentions." One of the elders said with a guilty conscience. He himself did not know why, but now that he was standing in front of Gu Mingming, it was hard for him to maintain his composure. An oppressive feeling spread throughout the entire space, making it hard for him to breathe. Gu Mingming laughed and said, "Worship? Ha, I remember that the rule is that only the leader and witch doctor can inherit the esoterica, right?" The elder did not dare to raise his head and only nodded in agreement. Gu Mingming continued, "I have already brought the leader and witch doctor away, what rights do you have to worship the esoterica?" The elder was at a loss for words. How would he have the guts to say that he thought Gu Mingming, Elvis and Leah might not be able to return, so he dared to force Oakley to hand over the esoterica. Gu Mingming saw that the elder did not speak and laughed coldly. "Moreover, even if I place the esoterica in front of you, do you know what it says? The Exalted One is unbelievably stupid." The elder's body grew colder with every word Gu Mingming said. In the end, he trembled so hard that he did not dare to raise his head. Gu Mingming did not have the patience to waste her breath on these stubborn old fogies. 1,000 years of experience and stability had caused a huge change in her calmness. No matter how Snake tried to persuade her not to use his identity to think, those 1,000 years of memories had already fused into her body and were starting to affect her personality. If it was in the past, Gu Mingming would have stomped her feet in anger at these fellows who took advantage of their seniority. Then she would watch Elvis or Leah solve these problems for her before turning around to coax her. But now she only felt that these people were childish and boring. It was neither funny nor infuriating. His emotions were as calm as an ancient well without any ripples. Chapter 609. Gu Mingming's words were just a calm and slow statement, but the few elders were sweating profusely, as if it was a cold and despairing threat. Yes. The elders expressed their allegiance from the bottom of their hearts, and then they retreated. Before leaving, one of the elders plucked up the courage to sneak a peek at Gu Mingming. After confirming that he saw the snow fox mark on her ear, he heaved a sigh of relief and followed the rest out. Gu Mingming rubbed her temples, her expression cold. Leah sat beside Gu Mingming gently, pulling her head towards his chest. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders and rubbed her temples gently, saying, "Are you tired? Actually, you can just leave these things to me." Gu Mingming shook her head and said, "You and Elvis were already severely injured in the Snake King Valley, and had been controlled by snake venom all this while, so your bodies have not been able to recover to their best state, and you were poisoned again because of the mating incident, which was simply one disaster after another. Gu Mingming frowned. She really did not know if this selfish habit was passed on to her by Snake, or was it just her nature. In order to not let herself have any regrets, to make herself feel better, she did not care whether Li's body could take it, and just mated with him. Although it was just a drop of blood from the tip of the tongue, and the poison had been detoxified in time, but Leah at that time was probably physically and mentally exhausted, and was at his weakest. Looking at Elvis, Gu Mingming did not mention the mating incident again in the end. She just said, "And how can you be as influential as me? I only need to reprimand you a few words to achieve the desired effect. Why do you need to spend so much effort to plan?" Leah chuckled, alluring and moving, hooked Gu Mingming's chin lightly, his eyes filled with deep affection, asking, "Is this because your heart aches for me and you can't bear to see me work so hard?" Gu Mingming tried her best to smile, replying with a single sound, "Yeah." Leah kissed Gu Mingming's lips lightly, just a light peck on her lips, like a dragonfly skimming the water surface before letting go. "Sandy has been here for a long time and is waiting for you outside. Do you want to meet him?" Gu Mingming thought about it but still nodded. "Shall we accompany you?" Leah asked. Gu Mingming shook her head and said, "There are too many things piled up in the tribe. You and Elvis should go and do your own things. Settle everything here as soon as possible. I want to return to Saint Nazir." Leah nodded and gently rubbed Gu Mingming's little head. He then looked at Oriton and said, "Go and accompany her." Oriton was expressionless and did not reply. He just walked a few steps forward silently and stood beside Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming shook her head and said, "No need." Sauter had 1,000 things waiting to be done and everything needed manpower to be arranged. "I see that those troublemakers from the Snow Fox clan are quite afraid of Oriton. Let him stay behind to help you deal with things." Leah did not say anything and just looked at Gu Mingming quietly. Gu Mingming looked down at her own hands. She did not know if it was an illusion, but she felt that her hands were much colder than before. Chapter 610. Gu Mingming did it unintentionally, but her words had suppressed all the males present to the point that they could not even lift their heads. She did not know if it was because her emotions were getting colder, or because she had something on her mind that she did not pay much attention to it, but for the first time, Gu Mingming ignored Elvis and Li's emotions. She just lowered her head and walked out of the meeting room. Cole was a 5th-level beast. Elvis was the only 5th-level beast in this room full of people, and he had to use the backfire of the mating contract to defeat Cole. Not mentioning the 3rd-level Leah, Oriton and Barit, there was no need to mention the 1st-level Oakley. Was their protection unnecessary to her now? Until Gu Mingming's figure completely disappeared from everyone's sight, Elvis and Leah kept their usual, smiling faces. They frowned deeply and their gazes dimmed. "She's forcing herself," Elvis muttered softly. Li's lips were tightly pursed, his long and narrow eyes were no longer filled with emotions, only worry. "I'm afraid that if she continues to hold it in, she will fall sick." Elvis looked at Leah and said, "Do you have any way to let her vent it out? She can cry or throw a tantrum if it really doesn't work. I can fight with her." Leah chuckled and glanced sideways, asking, "Fight? Can you bear to do it?" Elvis frowned, pondered for a moment and shook his head. Even if he was not Gu Mingming's match now, and even if Gu Mingming accidentally revealed a little of her beast pressure, he would instinctively feel fear. But he still felt heartache towards Gu Mingming, asking him to extend his claws and fangs at Gu Mingming, not to mention others. Even he himself did not believe that he could do it. But Gu Mingming's emotions were too well hidden. This made him very flustered, very uneasy and very heartache. When she first woke up, Gu Mingming's face was still filled with sorrow and sadness. As time passed, more and more of Snake's memories were awakened in Gu Mingming's body. Gu Mingming's expression became calmer and her emotions became more and more restrained. A person who always showed everything on her face had now become cold, just like him and Leah in the past. Clenching his fists, Elvis said, "If I can't bear to do it, then let her beat me up. As long as she can spit out the anger in her heart, even if she beats me to death, I will still smile." Leah patted Elvis's shoulder lightly and said, "If killing a few people can make Mingming happy, then I'll go with you and let her kill both of us. It'll be a worthy death. But you clearly know that Mingming is not a male. Violence and killing will not make her happy." Elvis sighed and nodded. These few days, even Huda and the other two could not make her happy. "I'm really afraid that she won't be able to hold on if this continues." Li's gaze was also gloomy as he frowned. "Every time Mingming is together with Sandy, she is always in a good mood. I hope this time Sandy can also make Mingming happier." Elvis glanced sideways and asked, You called Sandy over? Leah smiled bitterly. Isn't it sad? A pet that ascends by pleasing a female doesn't even have a way to make her happy. I have to rely on another female to coax my own. I'm such a good-for-nothing pet. Chapter 6:11. After Elvis finished speaking, he directly walked past Leah. Leah looked at Elvis's back view and smiled. That's why you are Mingming's first partner. If it was me, I might not be able to be as tolerant as you. Swaying his tail, Leah glanced sideways at Barit, Oriton and Oakley who had been standing silently behind him. My two guardians and acting witch doctor, are you still in a daze? The three who were called looked up at Leah in silence, each with their own thoughts written clearly on their faces. Leah chuckled. Although Mingming is very powerful now, this is not a reason for you to neglect taking care of her. Put away that useless inferiority complex and find a new position for yourself. With that, Leah swayed his large tail and chased after Elvis. Reposition? In the past, the most important task was to protect Gu Mingming's safety. But now it seemed like there was no need. In that case, where exactly should their new position be? On the other side, Gu Mingming sat on the stairs outside the stone house, looking at Sandy who was feeling rather uneasy. She knew that they could no longer go back. Her mentality had changed along with the 1,000 years of memories. She hadn't forgotten Sandy, but she couldn't play around with her like before. Cupping her face, teasing her that she was the most beautiful female in the world and if she was a male, she would definitely marry her. Now she could no longer say those words. And after that incident, Sandy had stopped Colin from saving Gu Mingming. Even though Gu Mingming did not blame her, she still felt extremely guilty. After that incident, Colin was relieved of his duties as a guardian. He did not say anything and only comforted her not to let her imagination run wild. But she knew that every time Colin saw Barit, he could not hide the envy in his eyes. Originally, he could also be a guardian who worked for the messenger of the beast deity. But because of her selfishness, it had turned into this situation today. She felt guilty towards Gu Mingming and also towards Colin. Now, Sandy did not even have the courage to hold Gu Mingming's little hand when she stood in front of her. You two changed your routine? Gazing at the wind with deep feelings? Leah swayed his large tail and leaned into Gu Mingming's arms. He looked at Sandy nonchalantly and teased, or could it be, you have fallen out of favor? Like I said, how can your little stubby tail compete with me? Our Mingming still favors us, don't you think so, Elvis? Elvis was not as good at concealing his emotions as Leah was. He only cleared his throat and did not say a word. Oriton followed Leah out and left without saying goodbye to anyone. When Barit came out, he saw Sandy and asked, "Where's Colin? He didn't come with you?" Sandy whispered, "Send me there, then he'll go back." Barit understood that Colin was too ashamed to see Gu Mingming. Oriton went hunting. He said he wanted to share dinner with us tonight. Chapter 6:12. As a human, the biggest problem with a mature mentality is that many things can be seen clearly at a glance. Elvis and Lee's accommodating attitude, Oriton and Barit's silent companionship, Oakley's hesitation and Sandy's expectant yet uneasy gaze. Gu Mingming could not breathe from the intense concern, but she did not want to let down these people who were concerned about her. Gu Mingming smiled and nodded at Sandy, saying, "Come earlier tonight, let's have a gathering." Sandy then smiled and nodded heavily. The moment she turned around, Gu Mingming saw tears welling up in her eyes. After Sandy left, Barit and Oakley also set off to look for a beehive nearby. Gu Mingming leaned against Lee's chest tiredly, her gaze landing on Elvis's face, looking straight at his worried gaze. She wanted to smile, but the corners of her mouth were too heavy, so she could only give up in the end. Then she said calmly, "I just can't get used to these 1,000 years of memories, nothing else. You guys don't have to worry so much." Elvis walked in front of Gu Mingming, held her hand and pulled her into his arms. He hugged her tightly, wishing he could squeeze all his warmth into her body, then use his own body to replace her in enduring those 1,000 years of boring and dry memories. But even if he was the first partner, there were still some things he could not do. No matter how strong you are still my weakness. Not worrying about you might be something I will never learn in this lifetime. Gu Mingming hugged Elvis back, gently pressing her face against his chest. She lowered her eyes and said slowly, "I'm sorry." Leah also stood up from the stairs, presenting his handsome and flawless face, kissing Gu Mingming who was in Elvis's arms. His gentle smile seemed to condense the mysteries in the deepest part of the ocean, as if he was trying to drown her. His voice was slightly hoarse, but with a different kind of ambiguity. "You clearly know that compared to an apology we prefer to hear your confession." Gu Mingming bit her lower lip but could not say a word. Her feelings towards Elvis and Leah were undeniable. But she could not say the words "I like you" now. Leah did not force her, he just rubbed Gu Mingming's little head and said, "Today is the first time I'm attending a gathering with you as an official partner. If you don't smile, people will think that you were forced to mate with me." Gu Mingming looked at the half-genuine half-fake grievance in Lee's eyes and her gaze softened. "I am the messenger of the beast deity. Who can force me if I don't want to?" Leah walked to the other side of Elvis and placed his arm on Elvis's shoulder. He said with a sad look, "You said you liked me on the day of the warrior selection in Sauter, but you ended up crying so hard that you were about to stop breathing when you returned. That night, Oriton came to tease me. He said, 'How much does Gu Mingming dislike you? You cry like this just because I say I like you.'" Gu Mingming looked at Leah imitating Oriton's expressionless face and cold tone and felt that it was rather comical. She finally curled her lips and laughed softly. Seeing that Gu Mingming finally smiled, Leah put in more effort and continued, "After that, I fought with him and guess what happened?" Gu Mingming shook her head, indicating that she did not know. Leah raised his head proudly and said, "Although we are both third-level beasts, his brain is not as good as mine, so he naturally could not gain the upper hand." Aside from the topic. Chapter 613. Gu Mingming was just about to praise Leah when she heard Elvis say calmly, "I remember when you came back that day, your face was swollen and bruised. You didn't look like you took advantage of me at all." Gu Mingming was stunned for half a second before she raised her eyebrows and poked Elvis's chest lightly. Leah was indeed so anxious that he started messing around with Elvis. Elvis hugged Gu Mingming and didn't want to bother with him, so he just burrowed into Gu Mingming's arms and whimpered for Gu Mingming to make the decision for him. "Smile." Gu Mingming tried her best to smile. Exposing each other's secrets was one of the tacit understandings they had developed over the years, right? When she was upset, they cooperated and coaxed her. If she still didn't smile, these two fellows would definitely be more worried. "Mummy." Jianghu rushed out of the house and directly pounced into Gu Mingming's arms. Gu Mingming caught hold of her son, who was at the height of her thigh, and carried him up with one hand. She gently tidied his messy hair from running, and rubbed his pair of wolf ears lovingly. Out of the three sons who had evolved into half-orcs, Rigialu's evolution was the worst. Other than having a pair of wolf ears, he still had a tail that had not evolved. Gu Mingming guessed that it was because Jianghu was the most affected by her genes that his evolution was not smooth. This made Gu Mingming feel very apologetic towards Jianghu. If it was because of her genes that Jianghu failed to evolve and ended up being a half-orc, what would happen to his life? She didn't even dare to think about it. "What's wrong?" Gu Mingming tried to make her voice sound gentle. She didn't want her emotions to affect the children. Even though the children were so sensitive, she still hoped to minimize the impact. Jianghu's thoughtfulness was just like Gu Mingming's in the past. His deep amber eyes were like the warm sun when he smiled. His young face had the unique innocence of a child and he smiled innocently and warmly. "I eavesdropped on your conversation just now." Jianghu covered his little mouth and secretly told Gu Mingming this little secret. His eyes were filled with pride and some joy. Gu Mingming felt a little unreasonable and didn't understand what Jianghu meant. She just said softly, "It's not right to eavesdrop on others." Jianghu blinked his eyes and tilted his head to look at Gu Mingming. "Why not?" "Daddy Leah said that we should try our best to grasp all the details so that we can control the situation to the greatest extent and protect Mother." Gu Mingming turned to look at Leah. Leah cleared his throat and tried to clear his name. "But I didn't teach him to eavesdrop." Jianghu frowned and pouted his lips. He looked at Leah with a threatening gaze. Leah gave in and leaned forward, whispering, "Don't betray me, I will teach you the art of deduction." Jianghu then nodded in satisfaction, before smiling sweetly at Gu Mingming. "Yeah, Daddy Leah never taught me to eavesdrop on others." 3 black lines hung over Gu Mingming's head. Jianghu was now in her arms, and after integrating Snake's abilities, her hearing was extremely good. Shouldn't he keep this kind of under-the-table operation a secret from her? Wouldn't it be too fake if she pretended not to hear him when he was so close to her ear? Chapter 614. Gu Mingming watched as Jianghu used his 2 little hands, which could barely reach his ears, to press his ears against his head. His clear big eyes shone innocently like a deer's as he looked at her. She smiled warmly and held Jianghu's little hands in her own. So warm. Tell me, after eavesdropping, what happened?" Jianghu looked as if he suddenly recalled something. His face lit up with excitement as he asked, "I heard Mummy and Mother-in-law say that they are going to roast meat tonight. Is it the kind with a bonfire? Many people chatting and eating together and listening to Mummy sing? Gu Mingming shook her head gently and said, "No, it's just a few familiar friends eating together. Without a bonfire and many people, I will not go and sing." Jianghu hung his head low, his face full of disappointment. "Oh." Gu Mingming used her finger to gently lift Jianghu's little face and asked, "Why? You want a gathering with a bonfire, many people and singing?" Jianghu pursed his lips and nodded, saying, "I could have participated the previous time. It's all that strange snake's fault for abducting us halfway. I only saw Mother singing and dancing from afar, and I was so groggy that I couldn't hear clearly." Gu Mingming's heart tightened as she looked at Jianghu's disappointed face that looked like he was about to cry. Sweeping her gaze across, she saw Huda, Kanwu and even the unconscious Qixin leaning against the door and peeking their little heads in. The other two little ones immediately shrank back when they saw Gu Mingming looking in their direction. After mumbling for a while, they lowered their heads and walked out to stand in front of Gu Mingming. "When the four of us were trapped in the underground prison, we talked about Mummy singing and dancing that day the most, and the fragrant roast meat. We all agreed that the next time there is a gathering, we must stick close to Mummy and watch her singing and dancing from a close distance, and eat lots and lots of fragrant roast meat. Mummy, do you think Qixin will wake up if our wishes come true? He obviously wants to see Mom sing and dance the most." Huda carried the unconscious Qixin in his arms. The three of them were with Qixin every day and were like four conjoined babies wherever they went. The three brothers took turns to carry Qixin in their arms. Other than Gu Mingming, no one else could snatch Qixin away from them. Gu Mingming thought that perhaps this kidnapping incident had really traumatized her three sons. Looking at the three pairs of expectant little eyes, Gu Mingming did not have the courage to shake her head again. Taking a deep breath, Gu Mingming turned to Leah and said, "Let's make the arrangements. The whole tribe will gather today and we will have a bonfire party at night." Leah smiled and asked, "What's the title?" "Reputation." "Ah." Asking the whole clan to hold a bonfire party, there had to be something to celebrate. If she directly said, "My son wanted to see it, so I made one," although it was the truth, it was still not very good. Gu Mingming gently stroked her ears and said, "Celebrating the mating of the messenger of the beast deity and the snow fox tribe witch doctor, is this title enough?" Leah was taken aback, his gaze gentle. He pulled Gu Mingming and Qixin into his arms and kissed Gu Mingming's lips, deep, lingering and unable to extricate himself. Chapter 6:15. That night, the bonfire lit up the night sky as the entire tribe celebrated. Elvis and Leah sat on either side of Gu Mingming, not even glancing at the rest of the people who came to celebrate. With the previous lesson, Barit and Oriton refused to leave Gu Mingming's side at all. The two steel-faced men just stood behind Elvis and Leah like bodyguards. Gu Mingming tried to persuade them a few times, but the two refused to loosen up. Helpless, Gu Mingming ignored them. The three young ones took turns carrying Qixin and running around the bonfire party. They kept sharing with Qixin how hot the fire was, how delicious the food was, how Mummy was going to sing soon. They kept sharing all the interesting news to Qixin, hoping to wake him up. But even though Qixin did not react at all, the three young ones were not discouraged at all. They carried Qixin and continued flying around. The snow foxes were in high spirits today, especially those females who had previously had conflicts with the females from Saint Nazaire. Their tails were raised to the sky. It was clearly written on their faces that, "See, who is the female that the mighty messenger has his eyes on." Sandy only wanted to reconcile with Gu Mingming and did not care too much about it. It was just that Mandy and the other newly joined females had to suffer. They were originally the #1 beauties of their respective tribes, but after just a few days in Saint Nazaire, they had to wander from place to place with the rest of the tribe. They had to go through migrations and battles, living their lives in fear. It was not easy for them to settle down temporarily, but they still had to fight with these foxes. Gu Mingming saw it all, but she could not bring herself to care. The affairs of the women were a mess. Once they stepped into it, they could forget about getting out of it. If they wanted to make a fuss, let them. Anyway, they would not be able to do anything. As long as it did not harm their foundation, Gu Mingming could not be bothered. Wabiai walked in front of Gu Mingming and looked at Elvis coldly, then at Leah. Then he kicked Elvis. "Go to one side." Elvis frowned. The moment he looked up, his murderous aura had already leaked out. Wabiai gave a condescending smile. Elvis's muscles instantly swelled up. Gu Mingming's emotions had made him feel vexed for the past few days, but he did not dare to show it in front of Gu Mingming. A snake beast at the peak of the 5th level, right? It was a good time to have a good fight. Gu Mingming looked at the two of them in a flash and said softly, "Are you two planning to tear Sauter apart?" A battle between level 5 orcs was not the same as when Nina and her partner bullied Sandy in the past. It would be considered a big scene if a few of them fought until their scalps bled. If Wabiai and Elvis were to fight, there would be no need for the campfire party. Chapter 6:16. After Elvis and Leah left, Wabiai took out a fruit from his bosom. It was bright red and looked especially alluring. Gu Mingming's eyes welled up. She stared at the fruit for a long time but didn't reach for it. Wabiai just held the fruit and looked to the side. "He wanted to pluck this for you the last time, but I plucked the wrong one." Gu Mingming remembered that day when Wabiai roared at Snake, "If your female wants to eat it, why don't you pluck it yourself?" In the end, he even tried to please Snake and was kicked onto a tree branch by Snake. Wabiai saw that Gu Mingming didn't reach for it after a long time and was rather impatient. He directly stuffed the fruit into Gu Mingming's hands and said, "This time, you didn't pluck the wrong one. Is the one at the top and the best and biggest one? Hurry and eat it." Gu Mingming held up the fruit and bit into it in a daze. The juice spread to every one of her taste buds. It was obviously very sweet, but Gu Mingming felt like she was chewing wax. She frowned but tried her best to smile. "Yeah, he has always had good taste. Tastes really good." Wabiai turned his head again and didn't look at Gu Mingming. He just said coldly, "I will be heading back to the Snake King Valley in a while. I will guard the place he used to stay." Gu Mingming nodded. "Yeah." Wabiai took a deep breath and continued. "Gu Mingming, you guard it." Gu Mingming looked up at Wabiai. "Guard what?" Wabiai kept his head turned and refused to look at Gu Mingming. "Guard yourself. Don't get hurt, don't get sick, don't get sad, and definitely don't die." Gu Mingming was stunned. She didn't understand what Wabiai meant. Wabiai said, "He once roamed the entire beast world and finally stayed at the Snake King Valley. I think that is the place he likes." Gu Mingming searched through Snake's memories but couldn't figure out how he liked the Snake King Valley. She only knew that he was used to that place and had not come out for 1,000 years. But if he didn't like it, how could he get used to it? With that thought, Gu Mingming nodded and agreed with Wabiai's words. But Wabiai's expression dimmed. "But in order to guard you, he abandoned the entire Snake King Valley without hesitation. So, the one he likes the most, is you." Gu Mingming's hand trembled as she held onto the fruit. She took a bite and pretended that she was busy so she did not answer Wabiai. Wabiai did not seem to be anticipating Gu Mingming's reply as he continued, "I will protect the Snake King Valley that he abandoned." You wanted to protect Gu Mingming? You will protect her for him. If you dare to hurt yourself in the slightest, I will definitely not let you off. With that, Wabiai ignored Gu Mingming's reaction and directly stood up to leave without looking back. It wasn't that he didn't want to turn around, but he was afraid that when he turned around, he would discover that the familiar pressure didn't come from someone he was familiar with. If that happened, he wouldn't be able to control himself. After Wabiai left, Elvis and Leah returned to sit by Gu Mingming's side. They each hugged Gu Mingming but did not know what to say to comfort her. Just as the atmosphere was thick, a snow fox ran over and bowed respectfully in front of Gu Mingming. Then he said, "Great messenger, there's a male outside the tribe who wishes to see you. Should we let him in?" Gu Mingming looked up and asked, "What male?" Chapter 6:17. Gu Mingming did not have much of a reaction because from the reactions of Elvis and Leah after she told Sandy about this story, there were probably quite a number of people in this world who believed in wuxialover. Now that her reputation as the messenger of the beast deity was growing by the day, it was not a new plot for someone to impersonate her old lover. If it was in the past, Gu Mingming would have laughed like a pig, or even choked on her own saliva. But now she just said calmly, "Chase him away, I don't want to see him. He was just a swindler." What was there to see? But in Elvis and Lee's eyes, her blandness had changed. Leah pursed his lips and exchanged glances with Elvis. In just a breath's time, they had already gone through 800 rounds of battle in their eyes. On one hand, this wuxialover had memories with Gu Mingming that both of them did not have. Even Lee's, "I prefer to hear you confess to me rather than apologize," was derived from this male. In Gu Mingming's words, that was her first love. With the return of this male, Elvis and Lee's position would be in jeopardy. On the other hand, Gu Mingming did not even want to see him, which meant that she was still angry. If he didn't mind it anymore, why would he still be angry? Gu Mingming had been in low spirits during this period of time. The two of them had tried everything they could but could not share her worries. Perhaps wuxialover could? In the end, the two of them reached an agreement. Gu Mingming was the most important. As long as it could make her feel better, no matter how painful it was, they could endure it. So, Leah waved his tail and laid on Gu Mingming's knee. He looked at Gu Mingming with his handsome face and asked, "Why not? Didn't you say, those who pass through the door are guests?" Gu Mingming did not see Elvis and Leah exchanging glances above her head just now, so she did not know that the holes in their brains had already reached the ends of the earth. Thus she just said calmly, "He's just a liar, what's there to see?" Liar? Didn't Xijin lie to her back then? If not, why would she be picked up by Elvis alone in the lake? Biting his lower lip, Leah held back his jealousy and said, "He lied to my Mingming's people, how can we let him off so easily? I want to meet him." Gu Mingming looked at Leah in confusion and did not say a word. Elvis held onto Gu Mingming's shoulders and pulled her into his embrace. He kissed her hair and said, "We know what to do, don't worry. Why should I be at ease?" Gu Mingming could not understand. Elvis said, "Bring him in." Gu Mingming looked at the jealousy in their eyes. She did not understand at first, but now she understood. Forget it, let them be. His emotions must have put a lot of pressure on the two of them recently. It was good to have someone come to their door to relieve their anger. So Gu Mingming nodded and the snow fox who delivered the letter turned and ran off, probably to bring the person in. Chapter 618. Gu Mingming did not know that ever since she inherited Snake's ability, her entire temperament had undergone a huge change. She clearly had a Lolita face, but her entire body was emitting a gloomy aura. She leaned lazily against Elvis's chest, smiling faintly at the males who were approaching her step by step. She did not appear to be perfunctory, but exuded a king's disdain that enveloped everyone. That was Snake's innate temperament, which could not be learned. Gu Mingming, as the heir, could at most unleash 80% of it, but it was enough to shock the world. Her gaze was filled with judgment and disdain, as if she was the king of hell, looking coldly at stupid humans. But that round and plump little face gave people a sense of confusion. The most innocent face had the most terrifying gaze. This contrast made people feel an indescribable strangeness, but also an indescribable harmony. Xijin had obvious wounds on his body. The most fatal one was an open wound on his chest that stretched from his right shoulder to his left lower abdomen. His flesh was exposed, and although the blood had stopped flowing, it still looked extremely hideous. There were countless other small wounds of different lengths, some were so deep that the bone could be seen. It was as if a large piece of flesh had been bitten off on his leg. Every step he took was painful but tough, and he had imitated the temperament of an iron-blooded Special Forces soldier very well. Gu Mingming's expression did not change at all, but Elvis and Leah looked at each other. They looked at Gu Mingming carefully, probably calculating. With such injuries, would Gu Mingming's heart ache? Then should they teach him a lesson now, or should they immediately bring him to be treated? That person stood beside the bonfire, as if he was not afraid of the blazing flames. But Gu Mingming could not only see the surface of a person, she could even easily see through a person's emotions, especially fear. Perhaps it was because the people who had appeared in front of Snake in the past 1,000 years had vividly portrayed all the types of fear in the world. So as long as you were afraid, Gu Mingming could see through any minute details at a glance. Fear of fire. That was normal. Before she appeared, the beast world had not seen fire for hundreds of years. Even the people from Saint Nazir and Sadr took half a year to get used to the flames. This Xijin was pretty good. To be able to show off to this extent, and to show that he wasn't afraid, he even purposely stood by the fire. He had some guts. "Ayun, I'm sorry I'm late." Xijin stared at Gu Mingming affectionately, not avoiding her cold gaze and sizing her up. Leah tightened his grip, feeling as if his heart was being clutched. Ayun? So Kang Moyan was her real name? Gu Mingming was a fake name? Gu Mingming smiled helplessly as she felt the tension radiating from her hands and shoulders. Chapter 619. Gu Mingming retracted her hand from Lee's and slowly closed her eyes. She mumbled one word as if she was sleep-talking and did not say another word. Leah understood that she was handing this liar over to him to deal with. So he swayed his tail, stood up and walked down. He circled around Xijin twice before asking, "Wolf beast?" Xijin nodded. Leah placed a hand on his shoulder and patted him twice before asking again, "Third level?" Xijin nodded again. Leah shrugged his shoulders and swayed his tail as he walked back. He still said one word, "Liar." Xijin was taken aback. He took a step forward and said, "I did not lie, I am Xijin." Leah glanced sideways at him and said, "Xijin is indeed third level, but Gu Mingming said that he is from the White Tiger Troop. Do you know what a white tiger looks like? Oriton, come over and let him see what a white tiger looks like. With that, Oriton, who had been guarding behind Gu Mingming, took a few steps forward and stood beside Leah, looking at Jin face to face. When two people of similar height stood together, the aura of Jin was instantly suppressed by Oriton. Oriton was one of the best among the third-level beasts. Other than Elvis, he had never submitted to anyone else. Although there was a fifth-level Elvis and a Beast King-level Gu Mingming sitting in the hall, other than these two strange creatures in the entire beast world, the peak of third level was already a very powerful existence. After all, most orcs did not have the chance to mate, so third level was a huge hurdle. And there were many orcs who could not even step into the third level realm in their entire lives. So, not to mention a mere imposter even if it was Leah. Oriton was not afraid. He swayed his neck left and right as a warm-up. This small action was learned by him subconsciously imitating Elvis. It gradually became a habit and could not be changed. I am here to look for Yen, not to fight. Jin had long heard of Oriton's reputation. Looking at that pair of fierce eyes, he felt really pressured. Oriton was expressionless as he said coldly, "If you can't even beat me, what right do you have to speak to the great messenger?" As soon as he finished speaking, Oriton roared and charged towards Jin. Phrases such as the opponent being injured and having an unfair advantage were worthless in the beast world. Who is to blame if you're injured? If you can't even protect yourself, it's because you're incompetent. Who should accommodate you because you're useless? Sorry, there was no such logic in the beast world. Jin was a level 3 orc after all. Even though his condition was not as good as Oriton's, it was not to the extent of Oriton's one-sided abuse. He dodged and could occasionally strike back at Oriton. Chapter 620. Elvis also slowly stood up from Gu Mingming's side. He took 2 steps forward and stood half a step behind Leah. He staggered his upper body and completely blocked Jin from Gu Mingming's line of sight. Ian flew out of nowhere and circled twice in the air. Then he spread his wings and flew in midair like a half-orc, looking down at Jin from above. It was not an exaggeration to say that Jin felt that there was an impassable iron wall in front of him. It was a high wall that gave off a strong sense of oppression and made it difficult for one to breathe. Walk over? Stop joking. He had no doubt that when he walked past these people and reached Gu Mingming, not even his bones would be left. Every cell in his body was afraid. Jin could not help but take a step back and said, I'll go. I'll go, all right? Oakley stood behind Jin, leading a group of tribesmen as the acting witch doctor. Among them, there was also the Snow Fox Elder who was at odds with him previously. They lined up in a row and behind them was a majestic group of beasts. In the dark night, pairs of bloodthirsty and dangerous eyes reflected sparks of fire, giving off an intimidating aura. Oakley laughed softly and asked, "Where do you think this is? That you can come and go as you please?" The Snow Fox Elder had an unfriendly expression and a pair of wise eyes shone with coldness. He looked at Jin and said, "You have already offended the mighty beast deity by pretending to be the messenger and disrupting the celebration party of the messenger and the 9th highness of the Snow Fox tribe. As the elders of the messenger tribe, we cannot let you leave so easily." Jin was really panicking. He originally thought that his looks matched Gu Mingming's description of Jin, so he came with the mentality of giving it a try. He thought that since he matched Gu Mingming's description in every aspect, maybe she would like him when she sees him? Males, as long as they were pleasing to the eye, they could just accept them. As for whether he was the real Jin, who would care? He did not want to make things so big. Jin was extremely flustered. There was a wall in front, a pack of wolves behind and a huge bird flying above his head. There's no escape. What followed was a live broadcast of a group fight. Yes, a group fight. A group of people beating up Jin. Elvis and the rest did not have a chance to attack as Oriton and Barit returned to Gu Mingming's side. Elvis hugged Gu Mingming back into his arms while Leah laid on Gu Mingming's knees, wagging his tail in boredom. Ian circled around twice before disappearing into the darkness again. A group of people around the bonfire were violently kicking Jin. "All right." After a long while, Gu Mingming said softly, saving Jin's life. Leah looked up with a puzzled expression. With a slightly sour tone he asked, "Your heart aches?" Chapter 621. Jin was stunned, shook his head and said, No, it was a crippled beast who taught me." "Crippled beast? Cool." The smile on Gu Mingming's face turned colder and her gaze was filled with venom. Her voice was calm and cold, and it was hard to tell if she was happy or angry. She just asked, "Where is he?" Yuxia was stunned, then he shook his head and said, "I don't know. He just happened to pass by our tribe and met me. Then he told me that I looked especially like an old lover of the great messenger. Then he told me that if I used the name Yuxia to see you, you would definitely like me. That way I could become the male of the great messenger. Even if you don't like me, you'll still let me stay in the messenger's tribe on account of my resemblance to that person. Our tribe was too weak in the past, and all the capable males had gone to better tribes to develop, leaving behind only the old and weak. Every year when winter comes, there would be waves and waves of stray beasts coming to snatch our food. If we don't leave now, we will all be forced to death." Gu Mingming quietly looked at the male who was beaten until his face was swollen and could not even stand up. She slowly spoke for him, "So you escaped and want to seek refuge with me?" Yuxia firmly nodded his head and replied, "Yes." Gu Mingming chuckled and asked him back, "Why do you think I will accept a deserter who abandoned his tribe?" Yuxia was startled for a moment, then shook his head and said, "I am not a deserter." Gu Mingming leaned back, her two thick tails pressing against her waist like a luxurious sofa backrest, allowing her to borrow strength to sit more comfortably. Gu Mingming looked at Yuxia nonchalantly. "Oh?" He coughed. Yuxia was a little emotional as he said, "I came to seek refuge with the great messenger so that Saint Nazir can accept my people." Gu Mingming gave a teasing smile and said, "Honey trap." Yuxia stood rooted to the ground, not knowing how to respond. What honey trap he did not understand at all. Gu Mingming leaned forward with her elbows on her knees and the back of her hands supporting her chin. She sized up Yuxia, who did not have an inch of good flesh on his body, and asked with a smile, "As long as I am willing to accept your people into Saint Nazir and become my beast pet, are you willing too?" The male nodded without hesitation and said, "Beast pet, guardian beast, or even food, I am willing." But Leah burst out laughing. He glanced sideways at Yuxia and said, "Even if you are willing, you have to see if our Mingming is willing. You have to be at least as good as me to be a beast pet. Look at your battered appearance. Who would like it?" Gu Mingming sat at the same spot and did not comment on Li's words. She just said, "You said it yourself, the tribe is only left with the old, weak and sick. They will only be a burden if they join Saint Nazir. Why should I find trouble for my own tribe?" Essen said, "Eugene, if not everyone please, Eugene, although they are only half-orcs, but..." Gu Mingming stood up and made a gesture. The 16 valued females from the previous beauty pageant, as well as Sauter's original female snow foxes, all walked in front of Gu Mingming in unison. It was really a riot of colors. The most important thing was, they were all perfect females. Gu Mingming stood in the middle of a large group of females. Even though they were of the same gender, it gave people the illusion that Gu Mingming was overbearing and aggressive, lying in the midst of flowers. Using 4 words to sum it up perfectly: invincible east. Aside. Chapter 622. The light in Yuxia's eyes completely dimmed. The most ideal situation would be for him to become Gu Mingming's male and receive her love, so that he could take care of his tribesmen. The next best thing would be for Gu Mingming to keep 2 half-orc females, so that even if the males could not survive the winter, they could die with no regrets. But now, his face was swollen and bruised, and looking at the male standing beside the messenger, was this how it felt to feel inferior? As for females, if it was any other tribe, even a half-orc female would definitely be accepted. But the messenger's tribe did not seem to lack females at all. Gu Mingming passed through the crowd and walked step by step to Yuxia. She squatted down and said in a calm voice without any emotions, "Your bargaining chip is not worth mentioning in my eyes. If you want to discuss terms with me, at least show some sincerity." Yuxia did not understand and just stared blankly at Gu Mingming. He did not know why, but he just felt that Gu Mingming was giving him a chance. After thinking for a while, he said, "As long as the mighty messenger is willing to accept my tribesmen, I can do anything you want me to." "Anything?" Gu Mingming chuckled and said, "Tell me the situation you saw that person from start to end, don't leave out a single word." Yuxia frowned and thought carefully before starting to narrate. "More than 10 days ago, there were stray beasts attacking our tribe. It was him who suddenly appeared and helped us defeat the stray beasts. We begged him to stay in our tribe. Although he was a crippled beast, he was still a 5th-level orc. With him, we would not have to be afraid of stray beasts attacking our tribe again. But he looked very sad and just looked into the distance, saying calmly, 'If I stay, it will be the real danger.' Then he suddenly looked at me and did not speak. After staring for a long time until I got goosebumps, he then opened his mouth and said that I looked like the messenger's old love. If I wanted to save the tribe, I could only rely on Saint Nazir. Then I came. Thinking about it, he was really rash. With just a few words from a person whose name he didn't even know, he actually brought his clansmen to this place after a long journey. Gu Mingming laughed coldly. Stray beasts attacked the tribe and he just so happened to appear and save the tribe? Cole did not look like a fox with a Lei Feng personality. Moreover, his mating mark had already been washed away by Gu Mingming. He was a stray beast himself. Why would he help the tribe fight against the stray beasts? Could it be that he had directed and acted on his own from start to finish? Gu Mingming smiled sinisterly, but she did not tell Yu Xijin her inner thoughts. She just said coldly, "Didn't he say anything else?" Yu Xijin frowned, thought carefully for a long time and said, "Oh, there is." He had even said something very strange such as, "If a counterfeit that is closer to the original appears, how long will you be favored?" That was the case. I didn't know what he was talking about. When I asked him again, he just smiled and said, "I'm just talking to myself." So I didn't take it to heart. Counterfeit? Gu Mingming turned back and saw that Leah was indeed unable to hold back his smile. He even knew about Li's habit of imitating Yu Xijin to please him, and he even spent so much effort to find an imitation that looked more like Yu Xijin, just to suppress Leah. Chapter 623. Yu Xijin could not keep up with Gu Mingming's pace and just laid on the ground, looking up at Gu Mingming as she walked back to Elvis and Li's side step by step. She sat down and returned to her original embrace, one black and one white tail swaying lightly on her left and right. The snow fox laid on her knees, looking enchanting and affectionate. The group of females laughed and laughed as they dispersed. The people behind them who were originally aggressive also retracted their murderous aura and scattered in all directions. It was as if the tension from before had never happened. After being stunned for a long time, he finally regained his senses. He and his clansmen could really stay in Saint Nazir. He could really become a member of the messenger's tribe. Struggling to stand up, Yu Xijin took a step forward and was stopped by Oriton. He did not say anything and only looked at Yu Xijin expressionlessly. They were both level 3 orcs, but Yu Xijin knew very well that he was no match for Oriton. Moreover, he had no intention of causing trouble, he only wanted to express his gratitude. So he shouted at Gu Mingming, "Burke." Gu Mingming looked at him from the corner of her eyes, not saying a word. Yu Xijin shouted again, "My name is Burke. From today onwards, my life belongs to Lord Emissary, and I'm at your disposal." Gu Mingming looked away and ignored him. She didn't need anyone else to put their lives in her hands. She no longer had the strength to bear another millennium. As she retracted her gaze, she saw Oriton handing Burke over to one of the elders and officially conveyed Gu Mingming's orders as the guardian of the messengers to temporarily settle the Burke tribesmen in Sauter and bring them along when Gu Mingming returned to Saint Nazir. Leah slowly straightened his body and wiped away the playful expression on his face. He looked at Gu Mingming and asked, "You clearly know who instigated him to come and you still accepted him?" Gu Mingming chuckled. "The beast deity told me to maintain a kind heart. He said that this is the only way for me to find a way to save Hutta." Leah remained silent. Hutta's matter was a thorn in Gu Mingming's heart. As long as that little wolf cub did not wake up, Gu Mingming would be forced to take on all of Cole's tricks. He sighed and said, "I'll send someone to keep an eye on him." Gu Mingming chuckled. "Afraid that he will be another Ellie?" Leah nodded in acknowledgement. But Gu Mingming shook her head and said, "There's no need. A person who is willing to sacrifice himself for the tribe will not place his own tribe in a dangerous situation just for Cole's goal." Elvis's voice was slightly cold. "You believe him?" Gu Mingming nodded. She did not know if it was because of Snake, but she could now easily discern the subtle emotions of others, especially lies and fear. Elvis sighed and said, "Because he really looks like Yu Xijin, isn't that right?" Gu Mingming chuckled. Chapter 624. Gu Mingming's heart clenched. Had her emotions reached such a stage that Elvis and Leah could not do anything about it? Actually, it was really nothing much. She just did not have much interest in anything and was not too upset even if she could not be happy. Snake's matter. She had already gotten over it, or perhaps it was the feelings Snake had felt when he saved her that combined with her guilt. With the beast deities and Wabiai's guidance and reminders, she was no longer that upset. She was just not happy or angry, but it seemed to have made those two fellows very worried. The corners of Gu Mingming's mouth twitched as she forced a smile. She looked at Elvis and said, I am really fine. I will slowly get better after a few days of getting used to this 1,000-year soul. Don't worry, alright? Elvis sighed softly, then hugged Gu Mingming even tighter. His faint and hoarse voice rang above Gu Mingming's head. I'm afraid the only thing I can't learn in this lifetime is not to worry about you. Gu Mingming did not say anything else and just quietly allowed Elvis to hug her. The three little ones were drenched in sweat from running and suddenly pounced into Gu Mingming's arms. Although Gu Mingming would not be pushed down by them now, Leah and Elvis still instinctively tried to stop them. But these three little ones were too agile. They made use of their bodies to make use of the time difference and directly bypassed Elvis and Leah from 3 different angles. They ran to Gu Mingming's side with their buttocks wobbling. Mummy, when are you going to sing? Jianghu carried Xianxia in his arms as he looked up at Gu Mingming and asked. Huda lay at Gu Mingming's feet, his big bright eyes filled with anticipation. But he pursed his lips and did not say anything. Xuanhuan occupied the most advantageous position and hung his whole body in Gu Mingming's arms. He looked up at Gu Mingming and followed Jianghu's words. Yes, Mummy, when are you going to sing? Gu Mingming rubbed Xuanhuan's little head and kissed Huda and Jianghu. Finally, she carried Xianxia in her arms and said, Let's go and sing now. The 3 children's eyes lit up. Xuanhuan gave Gu Mingming's embrace to Xianxia and followed closely behind her. He asked, Mummy, can we follow you? Gu Mingming smiled and nodded. Of course, I'll give you VIP seats. Jianghu, what is a VIP seat? Gu Mingming brought the 4 children and walked towards the bonfire saying, Very important people. It means a very important person. Xuanhuan sniggered and turned back to glance at Elvis, clearly provoking him. He went forward and hugged Gu Mingming's shoulders. At the same time he accidentally kicked Xuanhuan to the side. He only looked at Gu Mingming's side profile and asked, Are Leah and I VIPs too? Gu Mingming's face turned red. In the past, Gu Mingming could not notice Elvis and Xuanhuan's little tricks, but now she could see it very clearly. Chapter 625. Xuanhuan jumped into Lee's arms and said, I will sit with Daddy Leah. Gu Mingming shook her head. Xuanhuan was clearly the most like Elvis, but Elvis just had the worst relationship with him. Huda pursed his lips. He also wanted someone to carry him, but why was there no place for him? Gu Mingming lowered her head and hugged Xianxia with one arm. She opened her other arm and looked at Huda, saying, Come, let Mummy carry you. Huda looked up and smiled. He shook his head and said, I am the elder brother, I can walk by myself. He was satisfied that he was not neglected. Mummy was already having a hard time, he could not be her burden. Gu Mingming rubbed Huda's little head and bent down to carry him up. She kissed his little face and said, You are the elder brother of the 3 of them, but also my son. The moment she finished speaking, Gu Mingming's arms felt lighter. Elvis took over Huda and Xianxia was carried by Leah. Leah had always been on good terms with the children, so it was not strange that he would carry them. But Elvis, who had never carried anyone other than Jianghu, was now willing to carry Huda in his arms. This made Gu Mingming rather surprised. Elvis cleared his throat and said, Your males are still alive, there is no reason for you to suffer. Gu Mingming chuckled and said, It's just carrying 2 sons, they are not that heavy. Elvis stopped in his tracks and turned to look at Gu Mingming. His blue eyes were filled with seriousness as he said word by word, No matter how heavy it is, I should be the one to carry it. Gu Mingming did not argue any further because she knew that Elvis and Leah were already panicking enough. They desperately wanted to do something for her to make her feel better. And all she could do was to cooperate. Nodding, Gu Mingming had already walked to the side of the bonfire. The drum used for Colin's proposal was left in St. Nazaire, but Leah rushed to make a new one after knowing that Gu Mingming was going to hold a bonfire party and had promised the children to sing. It was basically the same as the first version, but there were some improvements on the details, making it look much more exquisite than the one in St. Nazaire. Gu Mingming held the drumstick and hammered on the drum, producing a deep and resonant sound. With that hammering, only the crackling sound of the burning wood could be heard in the entire square. Everyone looked at Gu Mingming in unison. Gu Mingming took a deep breath and flipped onto the drum. She sat sideways lazily with one foot on the edge of the drum and the other hanging down casually. She held the drumstick in her hands and hit the drum rhythmically, each beat more concentrated than the one before. After the last beat, Gu Mingming slowly opened her mouth to sing Aliens. As only a few races in the beast world knew how to sing, this song Alien had become Gu Mingming's masterpiece. Every time the tribesmen heard it, their blood would boil. Following Colin's roar, the scene was so heated that it almost went out of control. Gu Mingming instinctively turned to look at Qixin. He was still sleeping quietly. Smiling bitterly, Gu Mingming looked down in disappointment. She also knew that Qixin was poisoned by coal. How could one song wake him up? She had only agreed to Huda's request because she could tell that the children were thinking of ways to make her happy. She could not bear to reject the children's kind intentions, but in the end she was still delusional. What if Qixin could really wake up from a song? That would be the greatest mercy from the heavens. Chapter 626. The night campfire party lasted for a long time. To be precise, it was a night of revelry for the Snow Fox tribe. After 1,000 years, the Snow Fox tribe finally became the closest tribe to the messenger of the beast deity. The worries that had been in turmoil for 1,000 years gradually disappeared along with the mark on Gu Mingming's left ear. In the following days, Leah became very busy. Gu Mingming intentionally handed solder over to Oakley to manage. After all, in the 1 month that Gu Mingming was in the Snake King Valley, Oakley managed the tribe well despite the estrangement between the two tribes. So Lee's main task for this period was to bring Oakley along to handle some tribe matters and teach him how to balance the relationship between power and benefits. After Leah and Gu Mingming became partners, the Snow Fox tribe became more peaceful. In Lee's words, they made a ruckus previously because they were too uneasy and afraid that Gu Mingming would abandon them. So they desperately wanted to prove that they were stronger than the people of Saint Nazaire. This kind of situation was very common. It was the legendary saying that the more lacking something, the more they would flaunt it. But now that Leah and Gu Mingming's relationship had been confirmed, and Gu Mingming had told the elders that they were a family, the pride and nobility that had been ingrained into the Snow Fox tribe's bones for 1,000 years had gradually awakened, becoming the best framework to restrain them. There was no need to worry too much about restraining them, just a light sentence, "Don't forget you are from the Snow Fox tribe." It was easy for the elder and those troublesome females to settle down. The rain came suddenly. Gu Mingming had never seen such a majestic aura that could destroy everything in the modern world. Sitting at the entrance of the stone house, Gu Mingming reached out one hand to catch the rainwater falling from the sky. Gu Mingming frowned slightly as she watched the bean-sized raindrops land on her hand. It actually hurt a little from being smashed. If it was him, perhaps he would be happy? After all, he loved rainy days the most. A piece of beast skin was draped over her. Gu Mingming didn't turn back and just leaned into the familiar embrace. This rain will last for at least 10 days. The food reserves at home might not be enough, so I need to go out for a while. Elvis's gentle voice rang from above her head. There were quite a lot of people in this house now. Elvis and Lee's appetites had always been huge and they would usually come back after eating their fill while hunting. Accompanying Gu Mingming to eat was just to enjoy the feeling of eating with her. After Huda and his brothers evolved, their appetites had obviously increased. The three of them could eat almost an entire wild beast in one meal. After inheriting Snake's powers, Gu Mingming's appetite had obviously increased. A family would need about 5 wild beasts a day. The food reserves at home were indeed not enough. Gu Mingming stood up slowly and stuffed the beast's skin back into Elvis's arms. Then she looked at the rain and said, "I'll go, this kind of weather is more suitable for me than anyone else." Gu Mingming had just taken her first step and before her heel could even touch the ground, the back of her hand was pulled back by someone and she fell back into Elvis's chest. Elvis draped the beast skin hood over Gu Mingming's body, then hugged her whole body in his arms. After staying silent for a while, he said, "My female should be pampered. As long as I'm alive, there won't be any weather suitable for you to travel around. Understand?" Chapter 627. Elvis frowned and said, "You can't get drenched in the rain, water will enter your brain." Gu Mingming was taken aback for a moment before she burst out laughing. She remembered that this was what she used to tease Elvis and Leah. That time when they were digging bamboo shoots in the bamboo forest, Ian was also present and the three males even shook their heads with a straight face, saying things like, "I won't die anyway, it shouldn't be serious." He actually took it seriously and even remembered it till now. Elvis did not know what was so funny about this sentence, but it was the biggest smile Gu Mingming had seen ever since she returned from the Snake King Valley. It was rare to see her face so radiant and Elvis felt as if spring had bloomed in his heart and the sun was shining brightly in her smile. Elvis's large hand cupped Gu Mingming's little face and through the gaps between his fingers, her gaze was clear and calm. A faint smile was already extremely precious to Elvis and he was suddenly so afraid of losing this smile. He even thought. So what if he got drenched in the rain as long as she was happy? Even if he had to drown in the rain with her, he was willing. For some strange reason, Elvis actually nodded and said, "Don't run around, you must always stay within my sight." Gu Mingming knew that Elvis had agreed. In the past, she would always act cute and throw a tantrum whenever she asked him to do something, but as long as it was something bad for her body, he would never back down. But now, just a smile was enough to make him compromise. She must have done something wrong in the end, otherwise why would he become more and more humble after mating for more than half a year and having 4 children? Gu Mingming wrapped her arms around Elvis's arm and leaned against his shoulder. She nodded and said, "All right, I will stick to you like this." Her heart felt as if it was being ruthlessly tugged at by something. Elvis lowered his head and kissed Gu Mingming's hair. He smiled and did not say a word, only using the beast's skin to wrap her up more tightly. Then he carried her up and strode into the rain. The raindrops landed on the beast's skin, giving off a concentrated thud sound. The beast's skin had a certain waterproof function and the raindrops slid down the fur on the beast's skin, not drenching Gu Mingming at all. Gu Mingming wrapped her little arms around Elvis's neck and stretched out an arm behind him to catch the raindrops falling from the sky. It still hurts as much as before, but this feeling doesn't seem too bad. Elvis quickly brought Gu Mingming into the heart of the forest. With a few leaps, he placed Gu Mingming in a relatively open area. He tidied up the beast's skin and reminded her, "Don't run around, understand?" Gu Mingming nodded and gave Elvis a reassuring smile. Elvis transformed into a wolf and charged into the depths of the misty rain.